There's perhaps nothing more annoying than a loud creak or noise on your bike. One minute you think it's coming from the BB, and then the next it's the back wheel. If you're unlucky, you'll end up being the proverbial Wile E. Coyote, forever chasing a creaking roadrunner around your bike. So alongside our fabulous sponsors Muc-Off, we're here to help by showing you the top 5 ways to prevent or stop noises and creaks from happening in the first place. And if you have any tips of your own, then don't forget to let us know in the comments. An easy one to start with, don't forget to keep your chain clean and well lubed. A dry or overly dirty chain will not only wear your expensive drivetrain components quicker, it'll also make for some horrible grinding or squeaking noises. Now we're not saying you have to go full BikeRadar Simon Bromley and make a home waxing kit for your spotlessly clean drivetrain, although if you do, there's a link in the video description telling you how to do so. For many of us, we simply don't have the time or inclination for such a process. Instead, we'd recommend buying yourself a chain cleaner, some degreaser and some chain lube. You pop the degreaser in the chain cleaner, clean the chain, re-lube and away you go. The whole process can be done in 5 minutes and it'll keep your drivetrain in great condition and quiet at the same time. Disc brakes are wonderful things. They have amazing stopping power, fantastic modulation, and when set up correctly, require very little maintenance. However, the bane of many disc-equipped riders the world over is noisy, squealing disc brakes. There are many reasons your disc brakes may be squealing, but they mostly boil down to contamination or poor setup. Brake pads can be contaminated via a lubricant like brake fluid or chain lube, or degreasers. Once they've worked their way into the pads, there's no saving them and they'll need to be replaced. So we recommend using your chain lube or degreaser sparingly to avoid it spraying onto your pads. Glazed or dirty pads can also cause noise. You can mitigate this by bedding in your pads correctly and keeping your rotors and pads clean by using a disc brake cleaner. It's also possible to bring a glazed pad back to life by rubbing it with some sandpaper. Misaligned calipers and other setup issues may also be causing your brakes to squeal. While we don't have time to go into the specifics here, we do recommend clicking on our excellent disc brake setup guide, which you'll find in the video description. As we've already mentioned, properly cleaning and lubing your chain will help prevent any unpleasant noises coming from your drivetrain. But if you use the wrong type of lube at the wrong time, then that dreaded noise may come back to haunt you. There are loads of different chain lubes available and they all have their purpose, but the quickest way to reduce noise is to use either wet or dry lube. As you may have guessed, you use the wet lube when it's wet and the dry lube when it's dry. In wet conditions, dry lube has a tendency to wash off pretty quickly, and a chain without any lube on it is a noisy chain, exactly what we don't want. Wet lube is usually thicker and in dry conditions will attract more dirt and grime off the road or trails. If these particles aren't cleaned off fairly quickly, then it may up prematurely wearing your drivetrain and causing some nasty noises at the same time. So remember, get your lube right and you'll have a much happier and quieter bike in the long run. Point number 4. Make sure you grease your bolts properly. The bolts on your bike have the simple but important job of keeping everything from falling apart. You can help them fulfill their job to the highest standard by making sure they're properly greased. Prime areas of concern are your cranks, stem, saddle and seat post. All of your pedaling force goes through your cranks, so the bolts have to deal with a lot of stick. If they're not greased, they can soon start creaking. In extreme cases, they can also seize, and then you'll need specialist help to free a stubborn bolt. Although we have to mention a creaking crank may also be due to your bottom bracket, but that's a story for another video. You don't need to saturate a bolt in grease, a small amount will do, and should help prevent any annoying noises or creaks. Other sneaky areas those pesky creaks may be coming from, your pedals and even your cleats could be to blame. Chainring bolts are another prime candidate, as they are again subject to lots of pedaling force. Even your cables can suffer from creaks, so if you want to know more about how to silence any noises, then we recommend checking out our excellent BikeRadar article in the video description below. Incidentally, purists may quibble over the use of grease instead of anti-seize on bolts. Anti-seize is better in theory, but grease is just fine for most bike uses. Whether it's road or mountain bike, the feeling of adding some super lightweight bling to your bike is always a good one. But as a famous film once said, with great lightweight components comes great responsibility. So it pays to take care when fitting your carbon. Otherwise you may end up with an annoying creak you cannot silence. And the two things you need to give you the best chance of carbon nirvana are carbon paste and a torque wrench. The torque wrench allows you to tighten up your carbon components to the correct Newton meters. As lightweight carbon is usually built to tighter tolerances, these values are relatively low, in extreme cases as low as 1 or 2 Newton meters. This is where carbon gripper comes in. It kind of looks like grease with large particles of sand added in. It works by adding an extra layer of friction between the components, thus lowering the clamping torque needed to prevent slippage. This means your parts are under less pressure, which should reduce the chances of frustrating noises or creaks and make them last longer. All good things in our eyes. As always, if you have any suggestions of how to silence your bike, then we'd love to hear them. Finally, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe so every time we upload a new video, you get a notification.